Let me ask you something. Have you ever had your child say something so strange, so bone-chilling, that you actually felt your stomach drop? Not just a funny little kid moment, but something wrong. Something that made your house suddenly feel colder, like the air itself had changed. Because that's exactly what happened to me one afternoon when my 6-year-old daughter looked at me with those wide, glassy eyes and said, in a voice I didn't even recognize as hers, asterisk, she's watching me from the picture. Asterisk, I blinked, confused, turned to look where she was pointing, but there was no picture there. Nothing. Just a blank wall in the hallway. A hallway I walk past every single day. And right then, in that moment, I felt something that I still don't have the words for. Like I just walked into a lie that had been waiting for me for years. And if you think this is just some spooky kid story or some TikTok paranormal trend, stick with me. I promise you, by the end of this story, you're going to understand exactly what my daughter saw, and why it was never supposed to be seen. Now, I know you didn't land on this video by accident. You're here because the title pulled at something inside you, curiosity, fear, maybe even a memory you haven't thought about in years. Maybe your child has said something strange too. Maybe you felt watched in your own home. Maybe late at night, when the house is quiet, there's that one hallway or corner you avoid. Trust me when I say, I get it. And if you stay with me until the end, I won't just give you answers. I'll show you something about the way our minds work, about how memory, trauma, and something deeper, asterisk, darker asterisk, can leave an imprint where no picture should be. This isn't just a story. This is a warning hidden inside a memory I can't forget. So let me bring you in. Picture a small town just outside Portland, Oregon. Quiet, suburban, where people still wave to their neighbors and kids ride their bikes without helmets like it's still the 90s. That's where we moved about a year ago, thinking we'd finally found some peace after everything we'd been through. My wife Rachel and I, we were hanging on by threads. A lot of couples don't make it through what we did. But we wanted this clean start, especially for our daughter Lily. She deserved a childhood untouched by what happened before. And for a while it felt like it might actually work. The house we moved into was old, sure, but it had charm. That classic American dream vibe, wraparound porch, wooden staircase, the kind of home that felt like it had a soul. And maybe it did. Just not the kind of soul we were hoping for. Now, here's where you need to really pay attention, because this is the first moment I should have listened to her. The first sign. It wasn't the picture thing at first. It was Lily's behavior. Subtle, small changes, at least that's how it looked on the surface. She started avoiding the hallway upstairs. You know how kids can be about certain spots, thinking monsters are in the closet or under the bed. But this was different. She'd freeze when we walked past the landing. Her eyes would go blank like she was somewhere else. And then just as quickly she'd snap out of it, laugh like nothing happened. But that laugh, it wasn't right. I know how that sounds. I'm her father. Maybe I was just projecting. But when your child starts laughing in a way that feels rehearsed, like she's mimicking what she thinks a child should sound like, it hits you somewhere deeper than fear. Somewhere instinctual. I told Rachel. She brushed it off. She's adjusting, she said. New house, new school. It's normal. And I wanted to believe her. I really did. But then came the drawings. That's when things started shifting from unsettling to wrong. Lily had always loved to draw. Crayons, colored pencils, sidewalk chalk. She'd fill every page of her notebooks with suns, flowers, cats wearing crowns. But one morning I found a drawing on the kitchen table that stopped me cold. It wasn't colorful. It wasn't playful. It was done in heavy, aggressive strokes of charcoal pencil, which we'd never even bought for her. The page showed a hallway, our hallway. Every detail was perfect, down to the crooked light fixture and the missing baseboard. And at the center of it stood a woman. Or what looked like a woman. She had no face, just black scribbles where the features should be. But her body was twisted, like her neck was turned the wrong way, her arms too long for her frame. And above her head, written in Lily's shaky, uneven handwriting, were 5 words. Asterisk, she watches me at night. Asterisk. I took the drawing straight to Rachel. She was pale as a ghost. That was the first time I saw the doubt flicker in her eyes. But even then she tried to ground us. Maybe she saw something on YouTube Kids, she muttered. One of those creepy animation videos they sneak in. And again I wanted to believe that. Because the alternative, that this was coming from somewhere inside our daughter, or worse, from outside her, was too terrifying to fully grasp. But that same night it happened. We were brushing Lily's teeth before bed, standing in the hallway just outside her room. She looked over my shoulder and went completely still. I turned to follow her gaze, and there was nothing. Just that same wall. No paintings, no photos, just plain white paint. And then Lily whispered, so quiet I almost didn't hear her. Asterisk, she's watching me from the picture. Asterisk. It was one of those moments where reality seems to tilt. Where your body tells you something your brain won't accept. There was no picture there. But I swear to you, in that instant I felt watched. Not imagined. Not spooked. Actually watched, like someone was standing right behind the wall, staring straight through it. I scooped Lily up, heart pounding, told her everything was okay. But she shook her head, and what she said next made my blood run cold. Asterisk, she doesn't like you. Asterisk. I'll be honest, after that, something shifted in our house. Like a curtain had been pulled back and now nothing felt hidden anymore. Lily's nightmares got worse. She started sleepwalking, ending up in that hallway every single time, standing in the exact spot where she said the picture was. And each morning we'd find new drawings. More of the woman. More disturbing. More detailed. She was beginning to take on shape, curly black hair, a long dress, hands pressed against invisible glass. And always those hollow scribbled eyes. But it wasn't just the drawings anymore. It was the house itself. Lights flickering. Cold spots. Whispers at night we couldn't explain. And Rachel, she started changing too. You ever live with someone and feel like they're slowly being pulled away from you? Like they're looking at you but they're not really seeing you? That was Rachel. She became withdrawn, always tired, always staring off toward that hallway. And when I brought up the woman in Lily's drawings, she'd flinch, then say nothing. Until one night, she finally confessed something that changed everything. And that's where I have to stop you for a second. Because what she told me, it's going to make you question everything you believe about memory, trauma, and the way we pass things down to our children. It's going to explain why there was no picture on that wall, asterisk, and why Lily still saw one anyway, star. This is the part of the story where everything you thought was just spooky kid stuff starts to twist into something far more real. Far more personal. And if you've ever felt like you're being watched, even when you're alone, if your child has ever spoken to someone who isn't there, you're going to want to hear the rest. Because this isn't just happening to us. It's happening everywhere. And no one's talking about it. But before I tell you what Rachel said, you need to understand something about that house. About what happened there before we moved in. Because what I'm about to uncover connects to a past no one warned us about. A past someone went out of their way to erase. And the worst part? I think Lily was never supposed to see that woman. But she did. And now, she won't stop watching. It's strange how easily we let ourselves believe we're safe just because things look normal on the outside. That's the biggest lie we live under in this country. Suburbs mean security, front lawns mean peace, and a nice clean school district means your past can't follow you. But you and I both know that's not how the world works. Darkness doesn't care if you mow your lawn on Sundays or if your daughter has perfect attendance. If it wants in, it finds a way. And looking back, I think it started long before we ever saw this house. We were just too desperate to notice the cracks forming beneath us. For the past few years, Rachel and I had been slowly unraveling. Not loud, dramatic fighting. Nothing people would notice if they saw us at the grocery store or school functions. But it was a quiet erosion. Like water seeping through the foundation of a home year after year, until one day the floor collapses and everyone acts surprised. Our marriage hadn't been the same since the miscarriage 2 years ago. We had been expecting a second child. Rachel was almost 6 months along when we lost him. We never really talked about it afterward, not in a real way. I threw myself into work. She threw herself into Lily. And somewhere between pretending to be okay for our daughter and staying busy enough to avoid each other's eyes, we just faded. So when the listing for this house popped up, it felt like a lifeline. Like if we moved somewhere new we could press reset. Clean slate. That's what the ad said too. Asterisk, beautifully restored 1900s colonial with fresh renovations and endless charm. Asterisk, it felt like fate. But now, when I think about it, how cheap the price was, how fast the realtor pushed us through the sale, how little information we were given about the house's history, it all feels like a setup. Like someone wanted this house gone as fast as possible. But at the time we told ourselves it was a steal. And for a while it felt like it. Lily had her own room. Rachel got back into painting. I even cut back on hours to be more present. But then those first little signs started showing up, the ones we didn't have names for, shadows moving too fast out of the corner of our eyes, doors creaking open without wind, Lily talking to herself in the middle of the night. We explained it all away like any parent does. Until she said the thing about the picture. Now, after that moment in the hallway, I became obsessed. I started researching. Every night after putting Lily to bed, I'd scroll through Zillow, Google Maps, old property records. Anything to figure out what had stood in that hallway before we painted it white. The more I looked, the less I found. Like someone had scrubbed every trace of what that wall once held. The only clue I managed to find was from a grainy YouTube video buried under real estate walkthroughs. Someone had filmed a house tour of our exact home back in 2015, during an open house. At first glance, it looked like any other amateur walkthrough: blurry footage, shaky camera, awkward narration. But when the person filming rounded the upstairs hallway, my blood ran cold. There, hanging exactly where Lily said, was a painting. Not a photo, a painting. It was hard to make out, but it looked like a woman in black, sitting in a chair with her hands in her lap, looking straight ahead. The video quality was awful, but something about her eyes, they seemed almost too real. I paused, zoomed in, and even through the blur I could feel it. That same cold, invasive sense of being watched. I checked the comments under the video, just a few, mostly bots. Except for one. It read, *, they should have burned the painting, not covered it. *. I didn't show Rachel right away. She was already on edge, and I was still trying to convince myself this was all just psychological. Stress, grief, maybe even some kind of collective hallucination. But that changed the night Rachel finally broke her silence. It was just after midnight. I'd fallen asleep in the living room with my laptop open, researching local archives again. Rachel came down the stairs in her robe, barefoot, eyes glassy. She looked pale, drained, like she hadn't slept in weeks. She didn't even sit, she just stood behind the couch and whispered, *, I've seen her before. *. I turned, expecting her to elaborate, but she just stared past me into nothing. Then she blinked as if waking up from a trance and started crying. She told me something she'd never shared before. Not with me, not with her therapist, not with anyone. Back in college, before we met, Rachel had gone through something traumatic. She was in a group art therapy session for survivors of emotional abuse. Part of the program involved drawing or painting recurring images from your dreams. There was one woman in the group, Amanda, who never spoke. She just painted the same figure over and over. A woman with no face. Always in black. Always with her hands folded. After a few weeks, Amanda dropped out of the group. No one knew what happened to her. Rachel forgot about it, until years later, after we lost the baby, when she started seeing the woman in her dreams. Not just vague dream fragments, but vivid, consistent visitations. The woman would stand at the foot of the bed or in the corner of the nursery we never got to use, watching. Silent. Waiting. Rachel said she never told me because she thought she was losing her mind. Until Lily started describing her too. Now, I know what you're thinking. Could this all be the result of shared trauma? Like a generational imprint that's showing up in Lily through dreams or stories. That's what I wanted to believe. Until things in the house started escalating in ways none of us could explain. Lily woke up with scratches on her arms one morning. Not deep, but deliberate, 3 parallel lines. She didn't cry or complain. She just pointed to the hallway and said, "She's mad because I told you." Another night, I heard someone humming through the baby monitor we'd kept as a leftover habit. Just a soft, slow lullaby that neither Rachel nor I recognized. We ran to Lily's room, but she was asleep. Alone. And then there were the smells, flowers and rot, switching between sweet perfume and something metallic, earthy, foul. Always strongest near the hallway. I started wondering if someone had lived here before us. Someone who maybe wasn't fully gone. So I started digging into public records, going way beyond what was on Google. I requested old deeds, reached out to a local librarian who'd worked in town for over 30 years. That's when I first heard the name Margaret Hollow. According to a faded obituary, Margaret lived in the house in the 1950s. She was a painter. Mostly reclusive. Known for her portraits, eerie, expressionless figures of women in black dresses. Her final painting was never completed. She died in that house. Alone. No children. No family. The librarian told me something else too. Margaret was rumored to be involved in early experiments with spirit photography, where she'd layer images over her oil paintings to capture the essence of lost souls. Most people thought she was mentally unwell. But those who knew her said she believed her art was a way to trap what shouldn't be walking freely. That would have been the end of it, just a creepy backstory, a local legend, except for one thing. When I searched Margaret's paintings online, one came up in a forum about haunted objects. Blurry photo, low res. But it was the same figure from Lily's drawings. Same dress. Same eyes. The forum thread? It ended with a comment posted just months ago. *, if anyone still has that painting, destroy it. Covering it isn't enough. She finds her way back. *. And just like that, it all started clicking into place. The hallway, the missing painting, the blank wall where something used to be. But here's the part one can't shake. What if Margaret did trap something in that painting? Something ancient? Something watching? And what if someone, somewhere along the way, just decided to cover it up instead of destroying it? And now Lily's seeing her. But why Lily? Why now? That's the part one still haven't figured out. And I have a terrible feeling the answer is going to break everything. Because there's one thing Lily said last night, just before bed, that's haunting me more than anything else. She pulled me close and whispered, she wants you to see her too. I haven't slept since. And the longer I stare at that blank wall, the more convinced I am, something is there. We just haven't seen it, yet. But we will. And what happens after that? God help us. You know, there's this strange tipping point when fear turns into obsession. When the need for answers becomes stronger than your fear of what the answers might actually be. That's exactly where I found myself. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't working. My phone buzzed with missed calls from clients, friends, even my brother who kept texting, "Everything okay?" I didn't respond because I didn't have the words to explain what was happening inside our home, or inside me. Every spare moment was consumed with research, late-night searches for haunted painting stories, children seeing ghosts, Margaret Hollow, and trending keywords like paranormal sightings 2025 and caught on camera real ghost. The internet was flooded with content, creepy TikToks, horror YouTubers, Reddit threads, but none of it felt like what we were going through. This wasn't a story. This wasn't something I could scroll past. This was real. And it was getting worse. I had finally mustered the nerve to return to the local library to dig deeper into Margaret Hollow's life, hoping maybe someone had kept a journal, an interview, something that could explain the truth behind her final painting. The librarian I'd spoken with before, Mary Beth, seemed oddly distant this time, like she didn't want to help. She gave me a polite smile but didn't walk me to the archive room like she had last time. When I asked her if any other records had turned up about Margaret, she hesitated, then leaned in and whispered, "You should leave that alone. That house has taken enough." I laughed nervously, trying to play it off like I was writing a book or just curious, but she didn't laugh. She just turned away and walked off, leaving me standing there with this cold knot twisting in my chest. It was the first time someone outside my home seemed to confirm what I'd feared. This wasn't just in our heads. Still, I wasn't about to back off now. I stayed for hours, digging through dusty microfilms, court records, old real estate listings. And then, hidden inside a box labeled property listings, demolished homes, I found something that made my blood freeze. A floor plan of our house from 1961. It showed a room that doesn't exist anymore. A small room off the upstairs hallway where that blank wall is now. Not a closet, not a bathroom, an actual room. It had a window, a fireplace, and was labeled only as Margaret's studio. I stared at that blueprint for a long time, trying to make sense of it. Because if this room really existed, someone had gone through the trouble of sealing it off. When I brought the blueprint home to show Rachel, she didn't say a word. She just stared at it for a long time, then finally asked, "What if it's still there? Behind the wall?" That question stuck to me like glue. I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, after Lily was asleep, I got out a stud finder and tapped my way across the hallway wall. At one spot, the tone changed. Hollow. I marked it. Next morning, I went to the garage, grabbed my tools, and got to work. But here's the thing, when I came back, the spot I'd marked was gone. Not faded. Not rubbed off. Just completely gone, like the wall had erased itself. I tried tapping again, but the sound was flat all the way across now. Solid. Rachel swore she hadn't touched it. But she looked off. Well, distracted. And then she said something I still don't understand. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. That's what she wants. I pressed her to explain, but she just shook her head and went upstairs. I heard her crying through the wall that night, muffled and low. And that's when I started to realize something might be happening to her too. Something she wasn't telling me. The next morning, I found one of Lily's drawings crumpled in the trash. Not in the recycling, not in her room, just tossed deep in the kitchen garbage under coffee grounds and eggshells. I pulled it out, smoothed it against the counter, and stared. It showed 3 people, me, Rachel, and Lily, standing in front of the hallway wall. But this time there was a 4th figure standing inside the wall behind it. The same faceless woman, arms stretched out wide as if she were trying to push through. But it wasn't the figure that scared me most. It was the writing at the bottom of the page, written in the same childlike scrawl. Mommy said I have to let her out now. I confronted Rachel. I asked her if she'd told Lily anything, if she was playing some twisted game, trying to help Lily process all this. But she snapped, harder than I'd ever seen. She screamed that I was the one filling our daughter's head with these things. That I needed to stop digging. That I was going to make it worse. But her hands were shaking. Her eyes were bloodshot. And when she stormed off, I found something behind her art desk. A canvas flipped backward against the wall. I turned it over and my heart sank. It was her. The woman from Lily's drawings. Rachel had painted her. Not just once, asterisk over and over star. Dozens of versions. Subtle differences in every one. Some with eyes. Some with black holes. Some with mouths sewn shut. I stared at the paintings for what felt like an hour. Then I found one that made my knees buckle. It wasn't a woman at all. It was me. My face. My body. But distorted, stretched, melted, hollowed out. And standing behind me, her hand on my shoulder, was the faceless woman. That's when I realized something even more terrifying than ghosts or spirits. Asterisk, what if this thing isn't haunting our house? What if it's haunting us? Asterisk, our minds? Our memories? Our marriage? Our child? That night, I finally called someone for help. A local paranormal investigator I found through a forum. He had over 400K subscribers on YouTube, where he posted footage of hauntings, EVP sessions, infrared captures. His most recent videos were trending under Real Ghost Caught on Camera 2025 and Spirit Box Reveals Name. His name was Trent, and when he answered the phone, his voice was calm. Almost too calm. I explained everything, well, most of it, and sent him the pictures. He said he'd seen something like this once before. In Kansas. A family that was also haunted by a faceless woman. He offered to come by that weekend. But the next morning I got a message from him. Asterisk, I'm sorry I can't help you. She doesn't want me near your house. Asterisk. And that's when I really started to lose it. How does a stranger, someone who doesn't even live in the same state, know what she wants? And more importantly, why is everyone suddenly backing off? That same day I went back to the library. Mary Beth wasn't there. Her desk was empty, her computer screen black. When I asked the young intern at the desk, she looked confused and said, Mary Beth retired last week. Sudden health stuff. My skin went cold. Something wasn't right. I checked the local paper's website on my phone, scrolled past obituaries and small-town updates and found it. Not a retirement notice, a funeral announcement. Mary Beth had passed away in her sleep. 2 nights ago. And right beneath her name was a comment. Asterisk, she knew too much. She looked too long. Asterisk. That's when I felt it again, that sense of being watched. Not watched like someone's peeking through a window. Watched like someone's already inside you. But here's the part that still makes no sense, the twist I haven't been able to wrap my head around. Because last night, Lily crawled into bed with us, scared and shaking. She said the woman in the wall told her a secret. And when I asked what it was, she whispered something I'll never forget. Asterisk, Daddy let her in first. Asterisk, but I don't remember that. At least I think I don't. And if she's right, then maybe this isn't a haunting. Maybe it's a return. The hardest part of losing control isn't the fear, it's the doubt. It's the way every memory you've ever had starts to feel off, like it might not be yours after all. You begin to question everything, what you saw, what you think you saw, even who you are. That's where I found myself after Lily said those words. Daddy let her in first. It wasn't just a chilling sentence from a scared child anymore. It was a fracture. Something cracked wide open in me when she said that, something I couldn't put back together. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept seeing flashes, blurry images that didn't belong to any timeline I remembered. Me in that hallway. Me standing alone in the dark. Me talking to someone though I couldn't see who. And worse, I wasn't afraid in the memory. I felt calm. Like I wanted it to happen. By morning, my mind was spinning in circles and I knew I couldn't do this alone anymore. I had pushed away everyone in my life except one person, my sister, Tara. We'd been close once, before the miscarriage, before the move, before the house swallowed up every part of my life. I hadn't spoken to her in months, but something told me I needed to. I called her, left a voicemail. 20 minutes later, she called back, her voice calm but curious. I barely got a few sentences out before she cut me off and said, "That's weird. I was going to call you today." She sounded off. I asked what she meant. She said she had the strangest dream the night before, about me, the house, and a painting. She said it was so vivid she woke up screaming. And the part that made my stomach flip? In the dream, she was standing in our upstairs hallway staring at the blank wall. And she swore there was a painting there. A woman. Watching. I asked if she'd seen anything like that before in a photo or something online. She hadn't. She didn't even know we had a hallway like that. She hadn't visited the house yet. But the dream had shaken her so badly she was thinking about driving out. When I told her Lily had been seeing the same thing for weeks, she went quiet. Dead silent. Then she asked, almost like she was afraid to know the answer, "Did she say anything about someone being behind the wall?" My blood froze. I hadn't said anything about that part yet. When I asked how she knew, she admitted something she hadn't told anyone. Ever since our dad passed last year, she's been keeping his old journals. And a few weeks ago, while going through one of his final notebooks, she found an entry dated decades earlier, long before I was born. It mentioned a dream he had, about a faceless woman standing behind a wall in a house that didn't exist. Except he described it in detail, and it matched ours exactly. That's when it hit me like a punch to the chest. What if this wasn't just about the house? What if it was about us? A lineage? A pattern? Something passed down, carried, hidden in memories and dreams like a virus waiting for the right moment to surface. The idea made my skin crawl, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. I asked Tara to scan the journal pages and send them to me. When they came in, I nearly dropped my phone. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, but the words were clear. Asterisk, she waits behind the frame. She needs someone to remember her. Once you do, she belongs to you. Asterisk, and then beneath it, in red ink like it had been added later, asterisk, I saw her first in my dreams. But I think my son brought her back. Asterisk, I couldn't breathe. It felt impossible. Like my father had left behind a warning I was never meant to read. But if he saw her, and Tara saw her, and now Lily's seeing her, then it means this thing has been circling our family for generations. And somehow I've walked us all straight back into it. Rachel didn't want to hear it. When I showed her the journal entry, she looked genuinely disturbed, but then quickly shifted into denial. She accused me of spiraling, of dragging everyone down into my paranoia. I could see it in her eyes though, she was afraid. Not just of the woman, but of what I might be capable of if this kept going. And that's when I started to wonder, was she hiding something? Had she known more this whole time? That suspicion only deepened later that night when I checked her laptop. I know it's a violation and I hate that I did it, but something in me snapped. I needed to know if I was alone in this. What I found made everything worse. Her browser history was full of searches, asterisk, faceless woman painting, dreams that bleed into real life, how to suppress childhood memories, asterisk, and the one that hit me hardest, asterisk, can trauma skip generations? Asterisk, but it wasn't the searches that scared me most. It was a video saved to her desktop, not labeled clearly. Just a file named hollow_under. I clicked it. It was a recording. Low-res, static heavy. At first I thought it was footage from our security camera, but it wasn't. The timestamp said it was from 2 months ago, before Lily ever mentioned the woman. In the footage, Rachel is standing in the hallway middle of the night, completely still, facing the blank wall. Then slowly, without sound, she starts to speak. But not like she's talking to herself, like she's reciting. Her voice is low, rhythmic, almost like a chant. Then she lifts her hand and touches the wall, and a shadow, something dark and slithering, moves just beneath the surface of the paint. I nearly dropped the laptop. Because if this was real, it meant Rachel had known about her for months. Maybe longer. And she never told me. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She just said, I was trying to protect you. I thought if I ignored it, she'd stay quiet. I didn't know what to say. I still don't. Because now there's a part of me that wonders, was this thing always waiting for me? Or did Rachel somehow bring her back? And then something else happened. Something I can't explain. Lily disappeared. It was only for 10 minutes. But she was gone, completely. 1 second she was in the living room watching her show. I stepped into the kitchen for water, came back, and she was gone. No doors open. No windows. I searched every inch of the house, screaming her name. And then, just as suddenly as she vanished, she reappeared, standing in the hallway right in front of the wall, her hand pressed to it. She turned around slowly and said, she let me see her room. It's full of pictures. But none of them have faces. I grabbed her, held her, tried to ask what she meant, but she just looked up at me and said, she showed me what you did. And now I don't know who to trust. Not Rachel. Not even myself. Because something is surfacing. Something I buried. And if Lily's right, if I did something before we ever moved into this house, then it means this woman, this thing, isn't just watching us. She's waiting for me to remember. And once I do, I'm afraid it won't be our house anymore. I think we all have a breaking point, that exact second when something in your body, not your mind, realizes the danger is real. For me, that moment came in the quietest way possible. It wasn't some jump scare or slamming door. It wasn't even the shadow I saw pass across the hallway wall again, though that's happened so often now I barely flinch. No, it was a voicemail. One I wasn't supposed to get. One that wasn't meant for me. I woke up to it around 2:46 a.m., my phone buzzing against the nightstand. Unknown number. One new message. And the second I hit play, I knew something had changed. The voice was low, distant, like someone whispering through a layer of static. It said only one thing repeated twice, asterisk, you opened the door. You brought her back. Asterisk, and then it cut off. No name, no background noise, just silence that felt deliberate, suffocating. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just about dreams or history anymore. This wasn't just psychological. It was personal. And it was getting closer. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the living room until sunrise, lights off, staring at the hallway, waiting for something to shift, for that woman, whatever she is, to show herself. But she didn't. She didn't have to. The message was enough. Someone knew. Someone else saw what was happening. Or worse, someone was in on it. That morning, I went into the garage to check the camera I'd hidden in the hallway, a cheap security cam I'd bought off Amazon and wired behind one of the coat hooks, aimed straight at that wall. When I plugged it into my laptop, there was only one file. Just one. The rest were gone. Erased. But the timestamp showed 3:09 a.m., less than 30 minutes after I got the voicemail. I opened the video. At first, the hallway was empty, dimly lit by the motion sensor nightlight. Then, without any sound or warning, the light flickered, and the video glitched. When it returned, there she was, standing in the hallway. Not facing the camera but the wall. Her back was bent, her head tilted too far to the side, and her arms were lifted like she was reaching for something that wasn't there. But the worst part, she was moving. Not in real time. In this slow, unnatural, twitchy way, like someone skipping through frames of her own body. Her dress shimmered slightly as she moved, like oil on water, and then, after exactly 30 seconds, she vanished. Not walked away. Just blinked out like she'd never been there. I hit pause, heart pounding. Rewound it. Played it again. Same result. No sound. Just her, appearing, reaching, disappearing. I closed the laptop and ran inside, yelling for Rachel. But she wasn't in bed. Or in the kitchen. Or the bathroom. Her phone was still on the nightstand, unlocked, open to a text conversation with someone I didn't recognize. The name just said M. The most recent message from Rachel read, asterisk, he's starting to remember. I don't know how long I can keep him away from it. Asterisk, I scrolled up. The messages went back weeks. All cryptic, careful. Asterisk, she's stronger at night. Asterisk, asterisk, don't let him dig too far into the past. Asterisk, asterisk, it always comes back to the painting. Asterisk, my hands were shaking. This was Rachel. My wife. The person I thought I still knew. But she'd been keeping something from me. Not just fear or trauma. Something active. Something deliberate. I tried calling her. No answer. I texted. Nothing. Hours passed. I called Tara, my sister, to tell her everything, about the voicemail, the video, Rachel's text. She didn't pick up either. That's when the panic really set in. I drove to Tara's place 20 minutes away. Her car was in the driveway. Front door locked. I knocked, rang the bell, called out, but no response. Finally, I went around the back, climbed up to the deck, and saw the sliding door cracked open just an inch. I stepped inside, calling her name. Her house was quiet. Too quiet. No TV, no white noise, no hum of the fridge. It felt wrong. Like I was stepping into a space that had just been vacated seconds before. Her bedroom was empty, bed unmade. Bathroom, nothing. But on the coffee table I found a drawing. Not from Lily. From Tara. It was the same faceless woman. Drawn in thick charcoal, her fingers clawed against the edges of what looked like a mirror, or maybe a frame. And beneath it, in Tara's handwriting, asterisk, I saw her again. She said we belong to her now. Asterisk, I stood there, gripping that paper, trying to make sense of everything. My sister, my wife, my daughter. All connected to this thing, this woman, this presence. And I was the common thread. Maybe Lily was right. Maybe I did bring her back. Maybe I let her in. But if that's true, how? And then, as I was leaving Tara's house, I saw it. Something that made my stomach sink deeper than it ever had before. Parked across the street was a black SUV. Windows tinted. No plates. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. But then the passenger window rolled down, just a crack, and someone inside raised a phone. Not to answer it. To record me. I stood frozen. The SUV pulled away slowly, turned the corner, and vanished. I chased it, ran to the intersection, but it was gone. Like it had never been there. But it had. I saw it. I know I saw it. That was the first time I truly felt hunted. Now I don't know what's real anymore. Rachel hasn't come home. Tara's missing. Lily won't sleep alone. And last night when I checked on her, she wasn't in bed. she was back in the hallway, standing perfectly still, her fingers tracing something invisible on the wall. I asked what she was doing. She didn't answer. I knelt down, pulled her hand away gently, and that's when I saw it. Barely visible in the paint. Crack. Thin, straight, vertical, like the seam of a hidden door. I didn't make it. Was already there. And now I'm starting to wonder, what if there's more behind that wall than just a sealed room? What if it's not even part of this house? What if it's a gateway? And I've already opened it. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the crack in the wall behind where my daughter had been tracing her fingers. This thin, almost imperceptible line that now looked more like a wound than a flaw in the drywall. Something about it felt alive. Breathing. Like it could split open at any second if I dared to touch it. But I couldn't move. I was still caught in the disorienting chaos of the past 24 hours. Rachel missing, Tara gone, my daughter whispering to shadows, and some faceless SUV recording me like I was part of some surveillance op I didn't sign up for. I thought that was the moment everything fell apart. But it wasn't. Not even close. Because 10 minutes later, the real twist, the one that shattered everything I thought I knew, walked right through my front door. It was Rachel. She didn't look disoriented or panicked. She wasn't crying or shaken or bruised like someone who had just vanished from her own life. She looked calm, focused, like someone stepping into a plan that had been carefully laid out. Her clothes were dry. Her phone was still at home, but she had a set of keys in her hand and a manila folder under her arm. And when I asked where she'd been, she didn't hesitate. She just looked me in the eye and said, "I didn't leave." "You did." At first, I thought she was having some kind of breakdown. That maybe all the stress, the strange dreams, Lily's behavior, whatever presence had infiltrated our home, had finally gotten to her. But then she opened the folder and laid it out on the coffee table. Inside were dozens of photos. Printed. Not digital. All of them had timestamps and GPS coordinates. All of them showed me. In parking lots. At gas stations. Sitting on benches. Looking confused. Or worse, looking completely normal. Except I had no memory of any of it. I'd never been to those places. Never wore that jacket. Never stood next to that blue sedan. Yet there I was, clear as day. Like some doppelganger had been living a double life right under my nose. Rachel sat down, her voice steady but low, like she was preparing for a confession, or maybe an exorcism. She told me that for the last 3 months she'd been watching me change. Little things at first. Forgetting conversations. Rearranging furniture without knowing. Staring at the basement door for hours. But the real shift began 2 weeks ago, when I came home from the grocery store and didn't recognize our daughter. When I tucked her in that night, she said I smelled different. She said I felt colder. That I was quieter. That the real daddy was still inside the walls. I didn't believe her. I didn't want to believe her. But Rachel did. She started keeping notes, setting up cameras, monitoring where I went while I slept. She said I would leave the house for hours and come back with dirt on my hands and nothing to say. Sometimes I'd talk in my sleep in a voice that wasn't mine. And other times, this part chilled me to the bone, I'd stand over Lily's bed and whisper, "She doesn't belong here anymore." I didn't know what to say. I still don't. My mind rebelled against every word, trying to twist the narrative into something logical, something I could blame on stress or trauma or just sleepwalking. But then Rachel showed me the last photo in the folder, one I'd clearly never seen. It was from 2 nights ago, taken from inside the house. I was sitting in the dark, staring at the wall in the hallway. Same cracked line. Same flickering light above me. Except, I wasn't alone. There was someone standing behind me. Not Rachel. Not Lily. Someone taller. Faceless. Her head tilted too far to the side. Her hand on my shoulder. She looked familiar. And that's when Rachel said it. Slowly. Clearly. Without flinching, "You're not who you think you are." At first I laughed. I had to. It was so absurd, it felt like a line from a psychological horror movie trending on YouTube. Asterisk get out asterisk, Hereditary, something with algorithm-friendly titles like, "The Family I Married Wasn't Real." But Rachel wasn't joking. She explained that months ago, right after we moved into this house, I started painting again. I didn't remember this either. I haven't touched a brush in over 5 years. But she said I'd black out for hours in the garage, door locked, and when she finally managed to get inside, there'd be canvases everywhere. And not one of them showed real places. They showed the hallway. Always the hallway. Always the woman. Each time clearer than before. Sometimes she was coming out of the wall. Sometimes she was leading Lily away. And in one, Rachel said she was pulling me in. Rachel tried burning them, but they came back. Not literally, just new versions. Different angles. different nights. And then the dreams started. The same ones Lily had. The same ones I tried to dismiss. Only now Rachel said it wasn't just dreams. She'd found me one night speaking to someone in the garage, someone no one else could see, and I told them, she's ready now. We can bring her through. That's when she reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled, water-damaged photo. She said it wasn't hers. That she found it inside the vent of our bedroom, tucked into a cloth pouch. It was old. From maybe the 80s. Faded, warped by time. But the face was unmistakable. It was me. Younger. Maybe 12 or 13. Standing in front of this exact house. Only, it wasn't ours. Not yet. The yard was wild. The siding different. But it was this house. And next to me holding my hand was her. The same woman. The same crooked neck, faceless silhouette. The caption on the back just read, asterisk, he was always hers. Asterisk. That's when the pieces began to slide into place in the worst way. What if this wasn't about a haunting? What if it wasn't about me protecting my family from something external? What if I was the door? What if I was the thing that let her in? Rachel backed away like she was expecting me to turn, to shift, to become whatever she feared I already was. And in that moment, I couldn't even promise her she was wrong. Because the truth is, I've seen that woman before. Not just recently. Not just in dreams. I think she's been with me since I was a child. And I think she's been waiting. And maybe, just maybe, I was never supposed to leave this house at all. Maybe I was always meant to bring someone back. But who? And for what? Rachel didn't sleep that night and neither did I. We stayed in opposite corners of the living room, too afraid to be in the same room, too terrified to be apart. The air between us was heavy, like it was soaked in gasoline and just waiting for a spark. She didn't speak again after showing me the photo, not a single word, but her eyes followed me with suspicion, no fear, every time I moved. And I didn't blame her. Because deep down I was afraid too. Not just of whatever was haunting our house or what might be crawling through that crack in the hallway wall, I was afraid of me. Of what I might be capable of. Of what part of me had already been hollowed out and filled with something else. The line between possession and complicity was starting to blur. What if I wasn't overtaken, but invited it in? By morning the house was humming. Literally. A low vibration buzzed through the walls like a power surge stuck in place. The lights flickered even though the power hadn't gone out. Lily's toys started making noise from the closed toy chest upstairs. But what broke me, what absolutely snapped something inside me, was the sound of my daughter laughing. Not scared, not confused. Laughing. From behind the closed basement door. Rachel screamed when I lunged for it, thinking I was going to run down there and disappear like she had the night before. But I wasn't running away. I was running toward Lily. Toward answers. Toward whatever the hell had taken hold of this house and wrapped its fingers around our daughter's voice. But the door wouldn't open. Not with force. Not with keys. Not even when I used a crowbar to splinter the frame. And then just like that, the laughter stopped. Total silence. It was Rachel who finally said what neither of us wanted to say. She's not down there, she whispered, pale and shaking. Not anymore. Her voice cracked under the weight of it. She's somewhere else. And we need to get her back before she forgets us. Those last words landed like a brick in my chest. Because I'd already felt it happening, her memory fraying at the edges, calling Rachel, that woman, asking who I was when I tucked her in. We were fading in her mind, like whatever had her was trying to make room for something else. That's when the phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. And stupidly, instinctively, I picked it up. I didn't say hello. I didn't need to. A woman's voice, soft, familiar, almost maternal, greeted me like an old friend. You're ready now, she said. The house knows. She knows. You've seen what happens when you resist. But you don't have to lose both of them. Only one. The line went dead before I could respond. But the meaning was crystal clear. An ultimatum. Rachel or Lily. One comes back. One stays lost. And I, the man who built a crib with his bare hands, the man who fell in love with his wife during a power outage and proposed under the flickering light of a diner sign, I was supposed to choose between them? The emotional weight of it buckled my knees. I collapsed against the stairwell, heaving, not crying exactly but expelling something thick and soul-deep from my chest. Because no matter how impossible the choice was, not choosing felt even worse. If I did nothing, I might lose both. But how could I sacrifice Rachel, the woman who stood by me when my father died, who stayed through my depressive spells, who once told me she'd burn the world to protect our daughter, just to save Lily? Or worse, how could I offer up my child, my baby girl, the one who used to tuck her stuffed bunny into my shirt to keep it warm, as payment for our lives? Rachel saw it in my face, saw the shift, the internal breaking. She stepped forward, clutching my shoulders, staring so deeply into my eyes I thought she was trying to search for the man she married inside them. "No," she said, breath hot and desperate. "We find another way. We go to the police. We go to a priest. We go to the press if we have to. There is no world where we bargain with something that takes children. Do you understand me?" And I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the woman on the phone, wasn't offering me a threat. She was offering me a contract. A deal. One that had been in place long before we moved in. Long before we ever painted that nursery. This house didn't randomly pick us. I had been here before. As a child. As a son. Maybe even as something worse. That picture Rachel found wasn't just some artifact. It was a receipt. Proof that my soul, my bloodline, had already been claimed once. And now, whatever entity existed inside these walls, whatever came through that crack, was simply collecting on an old promise. So I made the mistake of trying to find out the truth. I left Rachel standing in the hallway and drove to the only other person who might know what happened in this house before we bought it, our real estate agent. Her name was Marcy. Mid-60s, no-nonsense, drove a beat-up Jeep, always had dog treats in her pockets. She said she'd lived in the area her whole life. Said she researched every property she sold. But when I showed up at her office and asked her point-blank about the house, what it was before, who owned it, who died there, her face went flat. Like all the color drained at once. She reached under her desk, pulled out a folder, and slid it toward me without a word. Inside was a single page. A deed. Dated 1988. My father's name was on it. Not someone with the same last name. My father. He'd never mentioned owning property out here. Never once said a word about this house. But his signature was unmistakable. And then, stapled to the back, was an old incident report. Handwritten. Sheriff's letterhead. One line scrawled at the bottom. Property sealed after child's disappearance. No remains found. Suspected family involvement. The name of the child? Rachel. The woman I married. The woman whose face has haunted my dreams in reverse. Less like a partner, more like a puzzle I never solved. Somehow, impossibly, her life had touched this house before I ever knew her. And she'd never told me. Which meant she didn't just marry into the mystery. She may have started it. And now I have to ask myself, what else has she hidden? What else haven't I remembered? And if she's been here before, what did she leave behind? My hands trembled as I drove back from Marcy's office, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing anchoring me to reality. The pages in the folder haunted me, flashing through my mind like strobe lights. My father's signature, the missing child report, Rachel's name written like an afterthought. This wasn't just a haunted house. This wasn't just some malevolent spirit targeting a single family. This was generational. Engineered. Like something, or someone, had been planting the pieces long before we ever set foot inside that front door. And as much as I wanted to believe it was all a sick coincidence, that maybe we were just cursed, the evidence pointed to something far worse. Design. When I got back home, the door was wide open. Rachel was gone. The house was empty but vibrating with energy, every clock blinking, every light on full brightness, the thermostat cranked to 90, though the air felt freezing. The toys were out again, placed in a perfect circle in the living room with Lily's bunny sitting right in the middle. Only this time there was a note under the bunny. Handwritten in the same looping, elegant script from the letter Rachel had received days earlier. She's coming home. You have 1 hour to decide who stays behind. I wanted to scream. To tear the walls down with my bare hands. But something stopped me. The hum. It wasn't just noise anymore, it had rhythm. A pulse. It moved through the walls like a heartbeat, like a signal. I followed it. Back to the hallway. Back to the crack in the wall. But it wasn't a crack anymore. It had widened. It was a fissure, pulsing with warm air, almost breathing. And behind it, I swear to you, was a shape. Not human, not entirely. Tall, feminine, cloaked in shadow. She didn't move, didn't speak. Just watched. As if waiting. I turned away. Because I couldn't deal with her. Not yet. I needed answers, and if Rachel wasn't here to give them to me, I had one other person who might. My mother. It wasn't just noise anymore. It had rhythm. A pulse. It moved through the walls like a heartbeat, like a signal. I followed it. Back to the hallway. Back to the crack in the wall. But it wasn't a crack anymore. It had widened. It was a fissure, pulsing with warm air, almost breathing. And behind it, I swear to you, was a shape. Not human, not entirely. Tall, feminine, cloaked in shadow. She didn't move, didn't speak. Just watched. As if waiting. I turned away. Because I couldn't deal with her. Not yet. I needed answers, and if Rachel wasn't here to give them to me, I had one other person who might. My mother. She didn't even seem surprised to see me. When I showed her the deed, the missing person report, Rachel's name, she didn't cry or deny anything. She just stared out the window and whispered, "I told him not to bring her here. I told him they would take her again." I froze. Again. And that's when it unraveled. She told me everything. That my father had been involved with a group, an underground circle, not quite cult, not quite corporation, that believed certain places in the world acted as gateways. Thin spots between this world and something beneath it. Places that whispered to the right people. That promised things. Wealth, healing, resurrection. But it always came at a cost. And the house, our house, was one of them. He had found Rachel as a child. Or rather, she had been brought to him. She wasn't his daughter, my mother said, her voice cracking. But he treated her like she was. Raised her for a time. Until they came for her. Until he offered her. My stomach turned. She said they tried to stop it once. Tried to close the house permanently, bury it under concrete. But the town intervened. The county lost the documents. The bank kept the house in its portfolio. And over the decades, families were rotated through, each one unknowingly feeding it. Losing something. A child, a parent, their mind. And the group? They grew more connected. More strategic. They used the house like a filter, drawing out people with the right tendencies. The right bloodlines. You were born there, she told me. Not in the hospital like we said. In that house. During a blackout. You cried for 6 hours and then just stopped. Slept for 3 days. Your father said you were touched. I wanted to run. I wanted to tear my skin off and start over. Because the thing inside me, the way the house responded to me, the voices I'd started to hear, the way Lily seemed to recognize that shadow behind the wall, I realized now it wasn't just haunting us. It was calling me back. And I wasn't the only one it had been calling. When I returned to the house, I saw Marcy's Jeep parked down the block. I approached carefully, hoping for help, clarity. But when I knocked on her window, she didn't flinch. She just looked at me with dead, glassy eyes. Her mouth moved, muttering something rhythmic. A chant. A prayer. And I saw, resting on her passenger seat, a photo, * our family star. Taken through a window. Inside the house. She had been watching us. Helping them. When I backed away, heart pounding, I saw the others. Neighbors. People we'd spoken to. The guy from the hardware store. The woman from Lily's preschool. All standing still. Watching the house. Every single one of them part of it. Connected. And I realized then, we were never alone here. We had been placed. Observed. Studied. It wasn't just the house. It was the whole damn town. And now they were all waiting for the answer to the same question. Which one of us would stay behind? And which one of us would never come back? The house felt like it was collapsing in on itself. Not physically but spiritually, like the walls were holding back an ancient breath that was moments away from exhaling. I walked through the front door for what I knew in my gut would be the last time, stepping over the threshold like a man crossing into his own grave. Rachel stood in the center of the living room, barefoot, eyes glassy, holding Lily in her arms like a porcelain doll. But Lily wasn't crying. She wasn't even blinking. She just stared up at her mother like she no longer recognized her. The air inside buzzed, thick and electric, and behind them the wall, the one with the fissure, was glowing, pulsing like it had a heartbeat. And from within it came the hum, louder than ever, layered with whispers now, dozens of voices overlapping, saying my name again and again. I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. I looked at Rachel and asked the only question that still mattered, "What did you do?" Her lips trembled. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "I was trying to stop it," she said. "I thought I could end it, but it never ends. They promised if I came back, if I brought her back, they'd let us go." Her voice cracked on the word go, and that was when I saw the full picture. Rachel had known all along. Not everything, not the details maybe, but enough. She had been taken as a child. She had lived through whatever this place was trying to do to her. And when we moved in, the memories came back. Fractured at first, then sharper, darker, and eventually undeniable. The blood in the floorboards. The lullabies sung from empty rooms. The way Lily always crawled toward that closet. She hadn't told me because she didn't trust me. Or maybe because deep down she knew I wouldn't leave once I knew the truth. And she was right. The humming grew louder, and the lights all blew at once, showering the room in darkness save for the crimson glow behind the wall. The shape appeared again, Tall, feminine, impossibly graceful. Her features were obscured, not shadowed exactly, more like reality itself refused to frame her face. And then a second figure emerged from the wall, smaller, slower, walking with jerky, unnatural steps. A child. Wearing Lily's old clothes. But it wasn't Lily. Its eyes were too deep, too black. The thing smiled at me. "You don't belong here," I said, my voice shaking. "Let her go. Let both of them go." The woman, if that's what she was, tilted her head slightly, like a puppeteer amused that its puppet had started talking back. And then she spoke, not out loud but directly into my mind. She is ours. She always was. You were just the key. The crack we needed. And suddenly it made sense. The house didn't want Rachel. It didn't want Lily. It had already touched them. What it wanted now was me. That's why it let me survive. Why it let me remember. The visions, the whispers, the dream where I stood in the basement while a man bled out behind me, it wasn't a warning. It was a blueprint. It was inheritance. I backed away slowly, trying to think. Trying to form any plan that didn't end in me giving up my daughter. But the more I thought, the clearer it became. This wasn't going to be one with logic. Or violence. This was psychological warfare. The thing in the wall didn't feed on blood. It fed on decisions. On fear. On sacrifice. So I did the only thing I could think of. I stepped forward, past Rachel, and reached out to Lily. And I whispered in her ear, "It's okay. You're going to wake up now." Her eyes blinked. Not once. But twice. And that's when everything cracked. The wall behind us began to ripple like water, and the light inside turned pitch black, like a star had imploded behind the drywall. Rachel screamed, shielding Lily as the child-shaped thing lunged forward, snapping its limbs, its mouth opening far too wide, unhinged and howling like a siren. But I didn't move. I faced it. I stepped into it. Into the wall. Into the void. I thought I would die. But instead I woke up. I was standing in a nursery. Bright. Brand new. Lily was a newborn again, sleeping peacefully. Rachel stood at the window, humming a lullaby I'd never heard before. Everything felt wrong. Too clean. Too quiet. And I looked down at my hands. They were shaking, younger. My fingers were stained with paint. I had been here before. And then it hit me like a freight train. This wasn't the past. It was a reset. The house had looped time. Reset the moment. It had rewritten the story. Put me right back at the beginning, but with all my memories intact. And when I looked at Rachel again, she didn't recognize me. Not completely. She just smiled gently and said, "Hi, I'm Rachel. You must be the new neighbor." And outside the window? The woman. Still watching. Waiting. Smiling. Because this time the house wouldn't wait years to feed. It already had me. The air was heavy, like the house itself had exhaled after the endless storm of memories and shadows had finally passed through its walls. I stood in the quiet room, the nursery that should have been a place of hope now feeling like a trap sealed by time. The weight of everything, the voices, the faceless woman, the fractured memories of my father, Rachel, and Lily, settled into a strange stillness. It was as if the house was waiting, holding its breath, giving me a moment of fragile peace. But peace felt foreign, almost unbearable after everything we'd been through. Rachel, who in this loop barely knew me, kept humming that lullaby by the window, unaware of the threads that bound us in a story far darker than any lullaby could soothe. I wanted to scream at her, to warn her, to tell her the truth, but the words tangled in my throat. The truth had become a labyrinth with no clear exit, and I was both prisoner and prisoner's key. I looked down at Lily, asleep in her crib, so innocent yet carrying the same shadow that had chased us through every waking moment. I wondered if she ever truly belonged anywhere outside the house's cold grip, or if her soul was tethered to those walls the same way mine was. Maybe some parts of us were never meant to be free. Maybe the house, the town, the past, they were all layers of a story that repeated itself, like a nightmare stuck on replay. Yet somewhere beneath the fear and confusion, a stubborn ember of hope flickered inside me. Because despite the darkness, despite the impossible choices and betrayals, I had learned something vital. The truth wasn't just about what had been taken or lost, it was about what we choose to hold on to. The love that fought to survive in the cracks between lies and shadows, the moments of light that refused to be swallowed whole. And then, as I turned away from the window, I noticed something I hadn't before, a small, almost invisible inscription carved into the edge of the window frame. It read, "For every ending, there is a beginning." It was a whisper from someone who had been here before me, someone who had seen the cycles, the resets, the eternal watchfulness of that woman beyond the glass. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe it was a promise. Or maybe it was a plea. I didn't know if I was the last chapter or the first page of a new story. But I knew one thing for sure: the house would never truly let go. It would always wait. Always watch. Always pull at the edges of those who dared live inside it. As I stepped back into the hallway, the crack in the wall pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat just beneath the surface, reminding me that the mystery was never fully solved, that the darkness was patient, and that some doors, once opened, could never be closed again. But for now, in this fleeting moment of quiet, I chose to believe in the fragile strength of family, of memory, and of the human will to resist the shadows, no matter how deep they ran. And maybe that was enough. At least for now.